Great. Thank you, Jan and Jenny and Ileana for having me here today. And thanks everyone for being here. Hopefully you can get something helpful out of this. Since I heard a lot of us are kind of brand new to Edulastic or haven't been using Edulastic a ton, I'll try to make sure I can give some of the basics and of kind of how I use Edulastic here. Can I take over screen sharing potentially?
Yeah, go for it. Let me stop sharing. Okay, you
All
should
right.
be able to go for it.
I'll start in those slides and then I am going to go in the app and kind of see, we'll see what it gets up. So give me a second. I'm sure everyone's used to this. All right, you should hopefully be seeing my screen right about now. I teach over at Evergreen Valley High School here in San Jose, and we have been doing distance learning for quite a while now, and that's really what kind of sparked my interest in Edulastic. But now I'm actually excited and can think of a lot of cases outside of distance learning where there might be a really strong use for Edulastic. So I know kind of at the start of distance learning, a lot of people were trying to use Google Forms, and in class, of course, in-person tests are great, but I always felt like there's a lot to be desired when it came to the data department. I always felt like there's a lot of work that I would have to do to gather really great insights from my students' tests, my students' quizzes, my students' assessments. I'd have to do a lot of work, a lot of kind of guesswork as well. Sometimes it felt like I didn't have the best data, particularly when it came to, writing assignments and things like that. So I really find myself and have found myself in my career sometimes struggling to kind of make the most of the assessments that I have and use those to drive instruction. And Edulastic does make it pretty easy to monitor student progress and to figure out where students might need extra support, whether that's a particular standard, a particular skill, or just a particular question type that students are struggling with. So Edulastic has really been a lifesaver during remote learning, as it's allowed me to continue to have quizzes and to kind of get a sense of where my students are. So I'm going to try to walk you folks through the way I use Edulastic and some of the cool features that allows Edulastic to help my students and to help make my life a lot easier as well. I know that often as teachers, it feels like we're barely staying afloat, or at least I feel that way. Hopefully I'm not alone there. And Edulastic is just a little tool that can sometimes make things just a little bit easier. So what's cool for those of you who haven't used Edulastic before is it's really, really pretty easy to use. It's easy to get started on Edulastic. It's not hard to do. And then once you're on, you just kind of start learning and learning and learning. I'm still learning some of the features of Edulastic, some of the ways in which to use it. So don't worry if at first you're like, I'm just going to stick with some simple multiple choice questions. That's totally fine. And it does link up with Google Classroom. That's how I use it. I'm using Google Classroom for assignments and this and that. And Edulastic links directly to Google Classroom. You can create any kind of assessment that you want. I've primarily been using it for more summative and formal assessments, but you can totally use Edulastic for a quick exit ticket. You can use it for a homework assignment. You can use it for lots of different things. It's really up to you. You could use it for informal quizzes. You could use it for just, progress checks here and there. It doesn't have to just be, here's your test or here's your quiz. And then ideally you get some great data and you can use that to drive your future instruction. That's kind of why I use Edulastic, why it's worked for me so far. So let's get into it a little bit. Here's why I use it. I guess I've kind of covered this. I like that I can make a ton of different questions. We'll go through those question types in just a second. I like that I can have multi-part questions. I can kind of do whatever I want. You also can just use it as a platform to have long essay questions, short answer questions. There's just a lot there that you can use. So it's really adaptable to whatever your needs are for an individual quiz, test, assignment. You can kind of make Edulastic work for just about anything. Okay, so today in the app, here's what I'm going to try to show you folks and try to go through all the different ways I use Edulastic. So we'll start by just kind of giving a quick overview of what we see on this Edulastic screen once we get on there, look at the class, look at making your own quiz. I've got a bunch of different questions I want to show you, some cool ones, some simple ones, and then how you can make the tests work in all sorts of different test settings. Finally, we'll finish up by looking at that live class board that Ileana and Jan were mentioning, which is really great. right now in distance learning for me, but also really great in general. You can see how students are doing in real time. You can figure out, oh, students are really struggling with this one question. I should keep that in mind. And then you can, at the end, use that live class board to see how students did overall. So hopefully I can be of use today. Hopefully you'll leave here knowing a little bit more about the app and more about how you can use it. And if you already are a user, figure out some maybe new question types or new ways to use Edulastic. I'm still learning. There's still more to learn. There's always more to learn, which is cool. And there's always more ways to kind of use Edulastic, which is great. I still feel like I'm, scratching the surface, and there's even more for me to do with the data, more for me to do with the questions. All right, so let me head over to my app. I've got a couple screens that I can share with you. All right, so big thing, I know we have a lot of folks who are new to Edulastic, who haven't used it before. So when I first got on Edulastic, first thing that I did is I created my classes, which is really easy to do. Here is just a fake class that I've created. What's great is super easy to sync with Google Classroom. You literally just put this in, you put your code in, and it does the work for you. Was how I've done it. So I've never actually added students manually. I know it is doable to do that, but entering it via Google Classroom for me and my school and our LMS, that was just the easiest thing. And then all my students populate right in. You also, when you make your tests, when you make your quizzes, when you make your assignments, whatever you're doing, there's a button where you can just sync it with Google Classroom. What's really nice about that is once I sync my assignment with Google Classroom, then it'll show up on the Google Classroom stream, and students will see it as an assignment. They'll be able to click in. So students won't have to go to like a separate app and log in via Edulastic. You pretty much can automatically get there right through Google Classroom. So I was actually really surprised when I first tried using Edulastic. I had zero technical hiccups with students. Every student got in very, very easily. Every student was able to get in and get started on a quiz like that. So I was impressed. I know we've all had trouble with technology before, and I was impressed with how little trouble I had getting all of my students on board and into the assignments, into the quizzes, into all of that. So I'll show you how you sync that in a little bit. Let's go into a test right now. So this is one I've just made. I've combined a few tests that I've made to kind of show you a bunch of different question types. So we open up this sidebar. That dashboard's where I start, has all your classes. So that's kind of the first thing you'd want to maybe do is figure out which classes you're going to use on Edulastic, how you're going to make that work. And then for making a test, now you can go through and make individual items in this item bank. I don't know what I didn't save, probably nothing important. So you can go through and make individual items, which are just quiz questions or documents or whatever, or you can make a test, which combines a bunch. No matter what you do when you're in your test, trying to make a test or trying to make an assignment, whatever you do, it will save and be saved forever. So you can pull it up in a different quiz. You can add it to a different quiz, different test, anything like that. So here's my quiz, Edulastic for social science. I combined some different stuff from US history and from AP macroeconomics, just to show you a couple of the different ways that Edulastic can kind of work for different question types. So there's really a lot here that we can go through. I know this looks kind of like there's a lot going on. It's pretty simple. I just went through and added items, made this happen. I just created items. I'll walk you through that in a little bit. Let's look at the questions. I think that's a good place to go. So I'm going to press view as a student so I can see what it looks like, what it will look like for students, because this is not what it will look like for students. For students, it's really simple. It looks just like this. So this is just like a really simple kind of question that you can do with Edulastic that's really nice, is you can just copy and paste in as much text as you want as a question. You can text in image or paste in images, tables, whatever you want. This is an excerpt from really, really great book, History of Standard Oil Company. Thankfully, I don't make the students read the whole thing, but a little excerpt here that they can kind of use. So this is just a really simple multiple choice question, and those are probably the easiest ones to make. But that's kind of just the tip of the iceberg. So you can do whatever you want with multiple choice, but you can go a lot deeper than just multiple choice questions. This is just another simple multiple choice question, but then I went in and made it kind of multiple parts. So here, this is for AP macroeconomics. So if you haven't seen this graph before, count yourself lucky, I guess. So this is a multi-part question, which are really easy to make. So you can make questions that have multiple parts to them, and they can have multiple different types of questions. So for this question, I start out with a graph and a multiple choice question interpreting that graph. And then students can go in, and this next question is a short answer. And this is a really short answer. I'm just looking for a word or two here. And students are able to answer this short answer. You can set this up. I actually can show you this in a second. You can set this up. You can set up a rubric to auto grade students' responses. So if I'm looking for like one word, say I'm looking for the word, I think I was looking for the word inflation. If they put inflation, there's a pretty good chance it was going to be right. I could set up the grading to give credit to everyone who puts inflation. And then if I think maybe that's not enough and I want to double check, I can go through individually and check that their answers are actually correct and that they are understanding the concept, understanding what I'm looking for. So you can set yourself up, you can set it up to match case. You can make them be required to keep uppercase. You can make it so it just needs to contain it. You can make it have to match directly what you want it to do. You can put alternative answers too. So if I thought, they could say inflation, or they could say in a expansionary gap here, that would be another answer. I think that works. I could put those as an alternative answer, and I'm not sure the limit. I've never run into it. I've always been able to put multiple answers. And then just another multiple choice question here. So let's continue on though. These are still into the really simple kinds of questions so far. Another really simple one, you can paste in your maps for geography type questions, or images. If you want them to label things, you can paste in different images of historical figures. If you want students to be able to identify that was something that you thought would be useful. There's really just a lot that you can do in a lot of different ways. So this is one way we could have a map question. You could also go through and make a map question that looks more like this, where students are going to go through and label based on where this little drag and drop tool is. Now I could also have made this question, instead of this drag and drop tool, I could have made this question be a fill in the blank. So instead of giving them these options, I could have just said, what states are these? And they could have had to type in, West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, all of that. So I think that's a really cool way to make maps work, or make, I guess mostly maps. I'm trying to think of another case where I don't want to use this particular labeling, but maps, something that I think our students really like is being able to kind of use this drag and drop or the fill in the blank here. So let's look at some more questions. These are just a few of the types. There's a lot more that you can see. So next here, obviously there's all kinds of multiple choice questions. So you don't have to just pick A, B, C, D, E. You can have questions where it gives you, there's multiple right answers. It's the kind of thing you'd expect, right? You can have a multiple check boxes, all sorts of different things. And these are just multiple choice stuff. You can paste in all sorts of things. These are all pretty simple. You can also really create big, long questions with lots of writing. You could have students write essays, short essays on Edulastic. Or you can, if they're worried about it, you can have them paste it in, whatever works. I actually did this question in 2 different ways. This is one way. And that's another thing that's really great about Edulastic, is there's a lot of ways to make the same kind of question. So this is one way. I have a big task that they're doing, comparing 2 different documents from the Gilded Age. So they're comparing 2 different documents, and they're having to write based on just the knowledge they have of these 2 documents and what they've learned in the class, which is cool. So they'd write it all down here, which is great. They can bookmark stuff and always come back to it later. It's one thing. This is what it looks like for students, but for students, they always can go back and it will save whatever they've written thus far, save whatever they've done so far. I've never had a student have a problem where they say, it didn't save my answer, or say, never had a student who says that it didn't work, or that they lost their answer. It always seems to do a pretty good job of auto saving, which is really important, I know. That's one way I could do it, just like this, just copy and paste my documents in. There's also more robust features where you can go through and create like a source set. So this is the same question, but just done it a little bit of a different way. I've done a side-by-side passage view, which is really cool. And I could have more than just 2 passages. For this one, I've just got these two tabs that I can scroll through and have the student kind of work and be scrolling back and forth. They can also make it full screen, so they're just writing, or full screen, so they're just reading. There's just a lot there. Both, I think, are totally great ways to make the same question. Just depends on your students, what you think is going to be most helpful for them and what works for you as well. Maybe you start out with the simpler question back here, and as you get used to Edulastic, you can really build on the skills that you have and make questions that have a little bit more going on to them, which is really cool. I think I have a few other question types. Here's a very cool question. This one is maybe the kind of thing I would give for a homework assignment. I could just give this one question, not one question, this one source set, this one set of passages. It's got 5 sources. We got all sorts of stuff about the Cold War here, which is really cool. We got timeline, images, we got political cartoons, and there's multiple questions for the students to answer just about this particular set of sources. So that might be a great thing for you to do. And you could put your homework assignments onto Edulastic, and then you can get that data really well, really quickly, really easily when students actually go through a source set like this. I know that in my classroom, really like to give students primary sources, secondary sources, and having a spot like this where I can, give them these 5 things and let them work on it is great. You could do this for a quiz, you could do this for homework, you could do this for an exit ticket. It's kind of up to you on what you think is works for your students. So let's see. Yeah, I got a bunch of other kind of questions that came along with this. Drag and drop answer, cause and effect stuff. This might be really great for some of you teachers who really like, or your students really like to kind of order and sequence things. So they can have them think, what are 2 causes? What are 2 effects? It's something really important in social sciences, thinking about cause, thinking about effect. And that's something that you can totally do here on Edulastic, which is great. And when you make your tests or your quizzes, your questions, they're saved. You can share them with your colleagues who are using Edulastic. There are a lot of questions that have already been made, and there's only going to be more questions that are going to be made moving forward. So, once you make this question, right, you can use it again and again and again. Maybe not for a test if you're worried about, worried about students seeing it, but if you're doing it for assignments, you can always make that a repeat assignment. And then, longer question here. So this is like a really kind of a full assignment in one big source book, full assignment right here. I think I have a couple other questions, classic little sequencing that you can do, which is great. Maybe you like to have students kind of order things chronologically. You can order things by, I guess, any other way you think is useful. These kind of questions are sometimes good. And what's great is for students, right? This is really simple. This is really easy to look at. Just another classic kind of question. You can put 2 sources on one page instead. So there's all these different ways to do the same stuff, which I think is really nice, and it makes it more approachable. It makes it easier for me, makes it easier for students as well to use. Just a nice political cartoon. Let's see, did I have any other question types that I wanted to go through? I think those were most of the kind of question types that I wanted to show you folks. As far as that auto grading goes, let's take a look at how I auto graded one of these, or how I can auto grade. So, oops. So right here, for one of these sources, I'm asking students what the theory is, and I can set it up to auto grade, so I don't have to actually go through and look at the correct answer. I'm looking for domino, and I can set that up where it could be case sensitive, or set that up where if they say anything like domino or any text containing domino, I can get it so that it gets them the point and saves me time, so I don't have to actually look through. Or if I do, I can go a lot quicker. So that's something that saves me a lot of time when I have short answer questions. If there's like a keyword I'm looking for, it can save me some time when I'm actually going through and grading some of these things. All right. So there's lots of question types. I'll show you how I can actually link standards to these, which is really great too. If you're really trying to make sure you're covering standards, that also will really help you out when you get your data from Edulastic. So I think I'm just going to quickly try to make a question right now, maybe just a really quick one, just a really quick item. So let's go with multipart. Multipart is cool because you can add all sorts of different kinds of questions in one. So those are some of the ones where you saw me have, an image with a multiple choice, and then one where it had, a short answer afterwards. There's lots of different stuff. So cruise through and make a first part. Maybe my first part is, what is, I'm gonna blank on question. What is the weather like? It's not going to be a social science one. Going to be like, it's just a multiple choice question. I could create my answers. I don't know why I would do this kind of question. It's going to be good or it's going to be not good. That's my two choices, right? So once I've started making my question, I can go into this metadata, and there's a lot here, and it can look like there's a lot going on. So I'm in grade 11. I can find my standard set. I'm doing social science. I'm here in California, so I want to use my California ones. There's lots though. I know someone in the Q&A had a question about New York. I quickly zoomed through and I found the New York one not too hard to find, somewhere around here. Yeah, here's New York, learning standards in the framework. So I'll just pull up the framework and see what kind of stuff they've got. Oh, they don't have anything. Oh, they do. Cool. Textual evidence. Maybe that's what I'm doing. Plug in my standard. Oh, I accidentally got rid of it. I plug in, this is what I want them to do. Primary sources, apparently. That's what maybe this is about. I can also do DOK. I can also just select the difficulty level. That's always fun for me. I always like to kind of do it to see what I think and then see what ends up happening. Can be useful, a little piece of data, and useful for you as well to see, are students struggling with easy questions? If so, is it the question, the way your question is being worded? What's going on? Why is there that disconnect? So you don't have to do any of this. You don't have to put standards. It's totally up to you. So sometimes when I'm making a quiz, it doesn't happen. I'm going to be honest. Sometimes you're trying to make something quicker and you don't have time to go through and tag everything. You can always go back later and tag your questions with standards when you do have time. So I've done this. I'm just going to say it's medium, and I've saved this. This is only one. Oop, I didn't make the answer choice. A is good. Oh, it doesn't like that I've given 3 choices. Didn't like that I didn't give them a correct answer. All right, now it should save. Hopefully it saves. And then I could add another part. Maybe I add, just a writing part. So there's plain text, short text, and rich text. There's not a huge difference between these, but you could totally add a rich text one. How do you feel today? This one won't have the option to auto grade since it is going to be an essay. But if I wanted instead to do one that did, oops, I think, does plain text? No, plain text won't either. It just needs to be the short text one where I can set up an exact match. So I can set this up. This is like that one with containment and domino theory. I can set it up to be, I don't want an exact match. I want any text containing domino. And this will allow Edulastic to do it for me. I can come through and double check my work, right? Double check that it all works, but I've never had any problem. Sometimes you got to be careful to make sure it's any text and make sure you add all the alternative answers, because sometimes students come up with stuff that's a little different. All right, so that's all the stuff as far as making your quiz, making your test goes. I'm going to go back to my test really quick and just show you how I'd sync it with Google Classroom while we're here.
Yeah, and then Greg, just a quick time check.
Okay, perfect. I will just cruise over really quickly then to our live class board. Here's a live class board. Since I'm running out of time, it's too much to cover, it's like class time. So here's the best part of Edulastic is this live class board, because as soon as students start working on a quiz, you can see their progress in real time. You'll be able to see that the students are working on their quizzes, working on their assignments. If they're not logged in, it'll say not yet started, and you can get in touch with that student and figure out why. whether that's in the classroom, whether that's in distance learning, whether that's for homework. You can figure out, oh, this student didn't touch it. It'll also show this gray is a part that a student maybe didn't get to. You can see that. This classboard will start to fill in as your quiz is going, and you'll see how students are doing. So for this quiz, this is from a macroeconomics quiz. I can see, oh, it looks like this question was maybe one of the tougher ones. Looks like this question was also pretty tough, and I can kind of use that to guide my future instruction. Use that data to say, oh, this question, I can click on it. This question 6 seems like it was a little tough. What about it was tough? I can look and see. It's also, I know I sometimes catch myself with questions that I didn't correctly create, or that I created the wrong answer. So it's kind of tough for students. Good to know. You also can share this live classboard with students. Up here normally it says present mode. That's why all these students have been anonymized into this. So you could, if you wanted, go through with your students and be like, here's what happened. And that's a really cool tool. You also can set up your quizzes, your assignments, your tests to redirect, which is basically just giving the quiz, the test back to students to try again. And that could be if you're having a quiz that you want students to really master, an assignment you want them to master. If they don't get 100%, you can set it up to automatically redirect, or just to redirect right back at a particular student. Maybe I see Red Bike. I know Red Bike needs to do it a little bit better, or wants to do a little bit better. I can redirect this back to Red Bike, to that particular student, or to students who are absent, or to a particular set of students. So the last thing that I'll show you really quick is just this standards-based performance, which is cool. So I only had 3 little standards that I linked to this, but I can see that, looking at my performance, it looks like A and B students were doing pretty well on, C a little less so, but in general, kind of across the board, I can see, okay, these 3 standards that I was trying to hit, my students are mostly hitting. It's not like they're doing great in 2 and horrible in 1. They're mostly doing okay. And I can go through and see individually, it looks like, a couple students might need an intervention here. So I use this to figure out the things maybe that I'm missing, the things that I need to go back and cover in more details. So I think that's really all that I had for you. I know I kind of droned on a little bit. I'm sure as teachers, you understand the desire to do that. You can, with the test, do a lot to allow students to succeed, whether it's in distance learning, whether it's at home. So you can set it up for students to open manually in class. You can have it be open for a week or something and have students do it on their own. You can have students get multiple tries. You can do a lot here in this test level settings to kind of make sure that it works for students. You can shuffle answer choice. If you do have teacher premium, you can do shuffling answer choice and shuffling and using the safe exam browser as well. So there's really a lot that you can do. You can make the tests work for you. They don't have to even be tests.